Hi, guys. Welcome back. So, today I'm talking about trauma memories and how, even if years and decades go by, if they don't get processed and integrated and released, they can still affect you no matter how much time goes by. So, if you're still affected by things that happened in the past and you don't understand why, you're going to want to watch this video. For those that don't know me, my name is Michelle. I'm a trauma-informed recovery coach. I'm also the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership. I'll leave the link there, where we meet together on Zoom and we work through the side effects of trauma, the coping skills, all the challenges. We work through them together. So if you're looking for more support, make sure you check that out. Okay, so let's talk about trauma memories and how they're different from regular memories, because this is where time heals all wounds just doesn't apply. So, what makes a memory of a traumatic event just be a bad memory, a painful memory, versus a trauma memory? So, a bad memory, right, a painful memory, something that was traumatic, does not necessarily become a trauma memory. So, what makes it different is if you were able to have support, if you were able to process what happened, then it becomes a painful memory that over time starts to lessen in intensity. Because it's not a trauma memory, with time, that wound, little by little, starts to be less and less painful. It may always be painful, but it's not going to have the same intensity as when you first experienced it. Versus a trauma memory. A trauma memory is like frozen in time. It doesn't lessen with intensity at all. And the reason why, and what makes it different between a painful memory and a traumatic memory, is the fact that when you experience the event, and again, it can be the same event that winds up giving you trauma memories versus painful memories. It could be the same event. And what happens is, while you were experiencing it or after you were experiencing it, something happened that didn't allow you to complete whatever was happening. It didn't allow you to complete the emotions you were feeling. It didn't allow you to process what was happening. In other words, let's talk about like exact examples. And I'm actually going to give you a personal example of one of my most difficult to overcome trauma memories. So one of the ways that I knew it was a trauma memory, and one of the ways you can look for, is oftentimes with a trauma memory, you don't have all the details. There is missing information. And sometimes you have perfect memory of what happened before the event and perfect memory of what happened after. So, for example, at one time in my life, there was someone in my life that just couldn't stand seeing me happy, couldn't stand seeing me enjoy being around people. And so every time we were in a social situation, if I was happy, something really horrible happened afterward. There was a fight, there was a shaming, there was a lot of blame, there was emotional punishment, things like that. And so I remember one day, we were out and I was having a blast with the people I was with. I was so happy. I literally remember, I have an exact sequence of what happened that day, who I was with. I can see it so clearly in my mind. I remember having thoughts like, I'm so happy. Like, I feel so confident in my own skin. I feel so good about myself. I'm loving it. I'm having so much fun. And then all of a sudden, there's this void of what happened later that day and into the next day. But I remember picking it up the next day, what happened after. So there was this void. So I want to talk about that for a second. So that's one of the indications of a trauma memory, is that a normal memory has sequence. You can understand it, when it happened, what happened next. You can follow a sequence of it. A trauma memory is stored in a part of your brain, and it's stored in fragments. So you get pieces of it, and they don't really make sense. So that's one thing. The other thing about a trauma memory is, because you don't have all the information, you can't process it. So for example, let's say you experience something that caused you a lot of shame. But let's say, as you're experiencing this shame, whatever's happening or whoever you're with, whether it's that person that inflicted the shame or someone else, is there and can help you to see what happened, can help you to make sense. Like that was wrong. Like you don't deserve that. That shouldn't be like that, or you're a good person. And somehow you get support through what's happening. So you feel the shame, you process it by understanding what happened, by clarifying how you see it. And so the shame completes its course. Because you understand it and you realize what happened, it's like emotions are energy in motion and it just leaves. But if you don't have that support and you feel the shame and you're going through this experience or this encounter, whatever circumstance it is that's creating the shame, and it comes up in your body and it's so intense and you're all alone and nobody's supporting you, boom, that shame that came up, you don't understand it, you can't make sense out of it, so it gets stuck in the body. It doesn't complete its course. And where it gets stored in your body is in the limbic region of your brain. And so in that area of your brain, there's no time. There's no time factor in that specific area of your brain. And so going back to my personal experience, whatever happened that day created such an intense emotion of shame. There was so much shame. However, I had no like memory as to what is the shame that I'm feeling. Why is it here? I had no understanding and no support. So that shame just stayed in my body. And so what happened was anytime I was in a social situation, my nervous system paired social situation, this shame, and there was no more information to process it. And so this is where traumatic memory keeps the past alive. Let's say I'm no longer around any people that cause me to feel that way. My nervous system will still associate those two things together until I teach it that they're separate. And so for a long time, I would be going into social situations that were great situations to be around, and yet my body would be flooded with shame. And when shame is in your body and you don't understand why it's there, you cannot be your best self. You can't even be you. You're not being your authentic self. You are being your survival self. And that was awful. And so in that moment, because it's a trauma memory, because it's stored in my limbic region, which is where the alarm system of my body, it's not stored in the area of my brain where I can make logical sense out of it. So because there's no time, this is what happens. You will go out and be around people, and your nervous system is like, oh, people shame. Something bad's going to happen. You are not consciously thinking that. The area of your brain that it's stored in, again, is your limbic region, and it is so fast. That thought comes up. All these emotions flood your body, and it is as if, again, because there's no time in that area of your brain, it is as if you're back, or I was back at that night when whatever horrible event happened that caused me such an intense amount of shame, reliving that in the present moment with people that aren't doing anything to you. And then when you don't understand this, you're like, I'm crazy. There's something seriously wrong with me. And that just feeds the shame. It feeds the anxiety. It feeds the nervous system's belief that it's not safe. And you can stay stuck in that loop, that trauma loop forever. And then what will happen is you wind up isolating because it just feels better in the body. It feels better with the nervous system. The problem is because you isolate, the unprocessed trauma memory is still in the body. It keeps coming up every time it's in a similar situation. You're re-traumatized, it goes back in the body. And that becomes a horrible, horrible loop that is really difficult to break out of. So hopefully you're understanding, again, just to recap. So the reason why this happens is because trauma memories are not stored in the area of your brain where there's logical sequence of events. It's stored more in the survival area of your brain, in your limbic network. And it's not stored as words, it's stored as sensations. So there's no logic, there's just emotions. And when those emotions come up in the body, it's as if you're feeling them exactly how you felt them when they were first inflicted. So it's intense. So let's move into what you have to do to work through them.